have been receiving constant reports from the Upper Nile region, mostly on the oil areas, that there is an environmental disaster at the areas due to the poor use of the chemicals after work. How much of a problem is at the oil fields?
Thank you for the question. In fact, Minister of Petroleum, Nile Petroleum Corporation, as a partner, together with other partners, and the operator, which is Dart Petroleum Operating Company, are working very closely to observe, the best practice for dealing with the environment. And to this end, HSE department in Dart Petroleum, together with HSE departments in the ministry and NilePet, are sending teams from time to time, to visit those sites and verify the reports that are submitted. What is very important also to note here is that Ministry of Petroleum environmental issues like decommissioning fee. So towards the end of the production in that particular block, this decommissioning fee will be used to restore the land to its previous status so that the local population can continue to benefit from it. And for that reason also, we are also attracting some international companies that will come and work in treatment of produced oil or disposal of chemicals in a way that guarantees, the safety of our people there on the ground. So the unused chemicals are now taken and disposed elsewhere where they will be treated. So Minister of Petroleum is implementing this policy and is keeping an eye on the operating companies such as DPOC.
Right now, so many people are claiming victims of the side effects from this situation. How are they being addressed?
We don't say that there are no cases, but the magnitude of which is being reported, by laymen is blown out of proportion. Yes, there are some cases where some irregularities or some diseases appeared, but in some cases, such diseases are also in other areas, and they cannot be all blamed on oil. But we acknowledge the fact that Ministry of Petroleum and the partners, including NilePet, needs to dig more down and carry out more investigation to verify, but also to put in place some measures that would prevent the appearance of such cases. One of the measures that could be taken, and that would also require the cooperation from the local population, is relocation of this population to some safe areas where they are not in direct contact with such water or chemicals. So it's one of the options that have already been, presented over and over again to the local population. That would require also their, cooperation with the ministry and also with the company, because there is a CD budget allocated for such cases.
Okay, as the managing director that is in charge of the state interests at the oil sector, you're always there with the partners. What regulations and policies that are there to monitor these partners that are dealing when it comes to disposing of the products?
We are, as partners, and then the operating companies, we always tell them that they need to align themselves and comply with the regulations and rules and guidelines of the Republic of South Sudan.
You came time where things are critical with NilePet. So what are your main area of concern right now? What are your focus at?
Thank you for the good question. During the time of Managing Director Machara Chek, when I was the Director General for Downstream, we put in place a 5-year master plan that we are strictly implementing. And in this 5-year master plan, we have planned for 5 refineries, 19 depots all over the country, ranging from Pagak, Nadapal, Morobo, Raja, and that is to serve the neighboring countries. So
the team that was headed by the managing director, the previous one, Tolweng Mathiang Rock, you were there. The announcement was made that the refinery would be up by the end of 2017. Now we're in 2018. Nothing is being done. So what do we have to say now?
Well, it's very important to stress that I was not part of the team that visited the refinery. And by then, we did not pay the Russian company the fee that was meant for renovation of the refinery. But this year, we have paid 3.5 million US dollars, remaining only 500,000, of which we'll pay 250,000 this month, and it will be remaining with only 250. Plus, the roads were not passable that last year. So it was too ambitious for my predecessor to say that the refinery was going to be fixed last year. But this year, with the fact that we have accomplished almost 70% of the road, and we've paid most of the money, and the equipment are right now in WOW, awaiting delivery to the site, we can say that before the end of this year, hopefully we'll deliver this refinery.
More than 400 companies, I suggest, have paid money to the NilePet, but they haven't received the fuel that they are supposed to get from the request that they made. With all this frustration from these private companies on the streets, how long is the NilePet going to keep on ignoring it, and how do you intend to address it?
Actually, NilePet is not ignoring. What we are telling them is that in order for NilePet, because this fuel is heavily subsidized, right? So you go and buy 1 liter for around $1, and you come and sell it at 12 cents. So you have a gap of 88 dollar cents, which you need to cover. So in practice, you need to get 10 million US dollars to buy this fuel and give it to these people. But what they paid actually to the government, which in this case, NilePet, is only 1,200,000. So you need to flush 8.8 million US dollars down the drain to give this fuel out. We are giving them options. Whoever cannot wait, we reimburse him. Whoever is able to wait, when we have our refinery up and running, we'll give them back their fuel. Or if we get some allocations from the Minister of Finance, we'll give them their fuel. But right now, NilePet is catering for the needs of the government, public transport, water tankers, interstate buses, like the ones that are going to Numili, those who are going to Baragazal. We are pretty much focusing on this. So we are saying, we acknowledge the fact that they have paid their money, but the money that they paid is not enough for NilePet to go and buy fuel and give it to them. So whoever can wait, he will wait, and then he will be given his fuel. Whoever doesn't want to wait and is having pressure, he will be given his money back.
Something about giving allocation of fuel to the transportation companies and also the water companies. You give them fuel, but the prices are still going up. They don't obey with the privileges that they get. What is your reaction on that?
This is my appeal to the public, that when you get your water and when you take the public transport, make sure that you tell them that these guys are given a heavily subsidized fuel by the government. We sell them fuel at the rate of 22 pounds per liter. So they are meant to serve our people, and they should not be allowed to blame the whole thing on spare parts. Now they acknowledge that NilePet is giving them fuel, but they say that it is spare parts. So there is a need from all the government, concerned government institutions to come together so that certain pricing is done. And we're working very closely with City Council and the management of Bunga Bus and Imatong buses, to have a unified kind of policy.
Welcome back to the program. Still with me here is the Managing Director of the State-Owned Oil Company, Dr. Chol, discussing with us the issues of the NilePet and the oil sector at large. Welcome back to the program, sir.
Thank
you. Yeah, let us look at the fuel subsidies. This is something that has been debatable in the parliament and also on the streets with a lot of controversies. Others saying that it should be lifted, others are also disagreeing with it. What is your position on this?
Coming to fuel subsidy was introduced after the realignment of our currency on the 14th of December 2015. And ever since, NilePet has been adhering to this policy from the government. So right now we are still selling to public transport, to water tankers, to interstate buses, to government institutions at the rate of 22. And they've been running very smoothly. We give them their fuel on a weekly basis, and even some government vehicles like Council of Estates, the National Assembly, and all these institutions. So initially the market was defragmented into two-thirds to be brought, two-thirds of the consumption and demand to be brought by private sector, and one-third to be brought by NilePet. So when the private sector realized that they have to go and buy it at 100 cents and sell it at 14 cents, they declined from bringing fuel. And it was only the one-third of NilePet that was being brought all along, which created a lot of shortage in town. And up to now, NilePet is still bringing its shares based on the resources that we get from the government, and then we supply the key sectors that are meant to get this fuel. If someone needs to come from his house to his workplace, NilePet is paying for, is actually, and the government is heavily subsidizing. And I want our people to know that the government is committed in every $1 million that is allocated by the government for fuel. Only the government is getting in return 120,000. So 880,000 US dollars is going as subsidy. So the government is committed towards delivering services to the people through giving fuel to water tankers, public transport, interstate buses, and the buses that are going to the state, plus the government sector.
But you see, Dr. Chol, now a number of private companies are now importing fuel and selling it at the black market at different rates, more than 100 SSP per liter. And NilePet is still selling at 22 SSP per liter at the petrol stations, but people are buying even in the black market. So what is the goal here for NilePet?
And, I can answer the first part where you say that the public are buying it. When there was some fuel scarcity, the public, like 20 liters of petrol, when it is not there, used to be bought along the road for up to 10,000 because it was not there. But the quality also was not guaranteed because some guys were adding, powder, soap, or some other funny additives that were damaging, a lot of cars. But now that it is at the petrol stations, I think that is why they're encouraged to go and buy. And then consumer attitude is where we actually concentrate on, that when you get fuel that is almost free of charge, people were just driving all over Juba, aimlessly. But now that it is at a much higher rate, people now are slowing down on the movement. And that part is also very important, that consumption attitude and the consumption patterns are normally regulated by market prices. And what is happening now is the market price that people are going to buy, because the private sector, as you are saying, that some companies are bringing fuel, they go and buy it, sell it, and then go again. So there is this element of revolving. But for the government, normally the government will buy it, and whatever the difference that is going, this is what is called subsidy. And the government is still implementing it pretty much. Basically, because when you have bunga bus that will carry up to 100 people at a go, it's much better than the other small private vehicles that would just take you and your friend. At this one, if you give them fuel, 300 liters per week, which we are doing right now, they will be carrying thousands of people over the course of the week. So it's more effective to give it to these people.
So before we wind up, I want to ask you something. Looking at the previous administrators, is there a way things could have been done that could have made things easier for the NilePet and also to the oil sector?
It's a very important question. First of all, we would like to thank His Excellency, the President, for promoting someone from inside NilePet. And for me, right now, I picked up from where the other MD, Machara Chek, ended. I did not take from my predecessor because all that was done during that time was nothing that has something to do with NilePet. But even the master plan, the 5 years master plan that we are following now, we put it when I was Director General for Downstream together with the former MD, Moses Machara Chek Adair. So it's always good, to keep it within the industry and bring people from inside the industry so that we don't hustle a lot before, we get the person on the right track. So from day one, I was able to identify where we need to cut some expenses and where we need to improve and what are the projects that we need to prioritize, because in front of me and in my office was the 5 years master plan. So I picked up from there and I continued with it. So Engineer Paul Adong and Machara Chek did well, and if there was to be continuity right from where they stopped, I think NilePet would have been in a different position right now. So we would have had some refineries that are running and rigs, because NilePet is working very, very strongly to realize its mandate on upstream by training the engineers and also acquiring some rigs and becoming pretty much an operator by 2021. That is our goal now. And that's why we are now working with oil service companies like Schlumberger to train South Sudanese engineers in different sectors. And we are going to take a batch of 7 people for 1.5 years, and before they come back, we send the other 7 from different sectors where they will be taken to Abu Dhabi and trained for quite some time all over the world, and then they come back so that they take over the oil industry. So I think things would have been different if we're keeping this trend of bringing people from inside the industry, but not from outside, because there you have a break. So every time you bring someone from outside, he's just beating around the bush, and by the time he finds his way, things are looking different already, because a lot of resources have been wasted in doing some trials here and there. But if someone was to be brought from inside, then from day one he would know where to focus and where to spend some money, because what is key for us now as we speak is to acquire some oil infrastructure, refineries, constructing depots, getting rigs, pretty much, putting our hands on what we are supposed to do as a national oil and gas corporation.
And that is it for today's edition of the State House Weekly program. For me and the rest of the team here, I am Joe Marang, and thank you for being with us. See you next week.